I'm gonna go ahead and start. So welcome, thank you guys for coming. This is the Category 4 workshop. So Category 4 goes over dynamic planet, geological mapping, fossils, and water quality. And all these events are mainly earth science based, with a few bits of chemistry as well. All right, so first up is dynamic planet. So this dynamic planet is an event that tests over your earth science knowledge. And every year is a theme, similar to anatomy and physiology. So this year, the theme for dynamic planet is oceanology. So it's been talking about ocean currents, ocean tectonic plates, and ocean formations. So the event details, you have teams of two, and you're allowed a 2-inch or smaller binder. You can have two calculators of any type, and there's a written test and or station, so some sort. And then you're testing over water movement, tectonic interactions, ocean levels. However, that's not for tryouts, tides, reef formations, and a few others, which I'll get into later. So once again, it's a rotating earth science. So about dynamic planet. So the written test will consist of, for tryouts at least, we'll ask over tides, coast tides specifically, currents, reefs. So this is Darwin's 3 reefs, tectonic formations such as subduction and what type of geological formations might be at the connections, oceanic research tools, which we have written out in the packet, ocean water composition. So this is both the salinity of the ocean, which is the salt levels, and also the chemical composition. And then you have to know the relationship between fisheries and currents. And then there's also representative activities. So basically, they'll have stations where you have to observe diagrams, make calculations, but for the sake of tryouts, we're not testing over calculations just yet. Or you have to use the data you're given to make a graph or form a hypothesis referring to what might be happening. So just a few images of what you might see. So at the top left, there's a image of a wave. So understanding wave anatomy is really important. And then you might have to know some calculations, but just for tryouts, just know your crests, your troughs, wave height, wavelength, and then understand the types of waves too. And then as well, we have tides, right? So understanding where the sun and moon in relation to the earth, how that affects the tides is also really important. Because we may give you a diagram, you might have to label it and then explain what type of effect it has on the tides. And then here you have tectonic plates. So for tryouts, please research on your own about tectonic plates. So like understanding what type of trenches or what type of formations might appear at, say, an oceanic connection or an oceanic continental boundary. So understanding those are pretty important as well. And once again, we have Darwin's 3 reefs. So fringing, barrier, and atoll. So you have to understand what makes up these reefs, how they form, and their differences between each other. So that's basically dynamic planet. So next we have our question. So please type this privately to Angelica. So what is the theme of dynamic planet for the 2020-21 season? And if you have any questions, you can feel free to ask about the event. Do we have all the answers?
Not quite, but I think you can move on.
Okay. So next we have geological mapping.
So for geologic mapping, as you can see, it's going to be all about geology. So like geologic history, structural geology, and maps, a lot of maps. So some event details for geologic mapping is this could be a written exam, or it could be stations, or it can include both. So if the event includes stations, have the same topics as before. It'll just be like split into like question 1, 2, you rotate around. And also they will also provide some like samples, so like core drills, which you will like uh, and like investigate. Also for this event, you're allowed a 1-2 inch or smaller 3-ring binder. So like as we stated in our like previous workshops, make sure you guys understand how to like efficiently organize your binder so that you're not wasting time flipping through it. And for this event, I would also suggest bringing a protractor, ruler, colored pencils, and non-programmable, non-graphing calculator, as this event includes a lot of calculations and like map drawings, so you want to be like as precise as possible. And so bringing like protractors and rulers are very important. And again, with like calculation problems, you want to have a calculator, as most of these questions will be about like basic trig. Also for this event, there's 3 types of questions that they will ask, which is theory, calculation, and construction, which I will explain more in the next slide. So for theory questions, it'll be about like maps, earth science, so like plate tectonics, how rocks are formed, and like earth structure, which is like crust, mantle, like core, that stuff. Also, you have major geologic structures, which is like domes, basins, monoclines. So make sure you understand the different types of structures and are able to identify them if given them on pictures, and make sure you know like your plate tectonics, just like in in dynamic planning, and make sure you understand the different types of maps, which is like topographic and geographic. So the next type of questions you have are calculation questions, which is you'll be calculating like distance or like thickness. So one of the common questions that show up is 3-point questions, which is basically where you will calculate a rock layer, and you'll have to like calculate the thickness of the provided diagram, calculate from, and it's like a topographic map sort of, and it'll have like 3 X points, and you'll use like basic trig, which is where the calculator comes in handy, as you won't know how to do like sine or like tan off the top of your head. Another type is calculating true bed thickness, which is basically, again, you'll be given like a rock layer, and you'll have to calculate the true thickness. And you can find a lot of like example questions on the Scioli wiki page. And also in our resource packets, we linked a video that shows you how to calculate bed thickness. So it's good for you to like read up on that and understand how these calculation problems work. You will just need to know for tryouts about 3-point questions and calculating true bed thickness. And then next, for construction questions, you basically be map drawing. So if you remember in 8th grade, we did a little bit of like topographic profiles and topographic maps. So topographic profiles is where you have like the topographic map, and you like translate it onto another sheet of paper where it shows like the side viewpoint of like the different elevations. And so you'll be doing a lot of those in geologic mapping. And geographic profiles is also similar. It's just a little more complex, as it has a lot of subsurface structures that you'll need to like interpret. So also make sure you guys read up on that and like do little practice problems, which you can find in the Scioli wiki page. And then next is stereo nets. So stereo nets is basically a 2D sphere, and you'll be using this to like plot geographic structures onto a piece of paper where they intersect the center point and they form like arcs. You won't need to know how, you won't need to like plot stereo nets on the tryouts test, but you will need to understand what they are and how they work. So again, make sure you guys read up on this in our resource packets. And then next, because this is geologic mapping, there is a lot of maps involved. So the 2 main types is topographic maps and geographic maps. So topographic maps is basically, it shows like the contour outline of like Earth's surface, of like the shape and like the structure. And so, and then geographic maps shows the geologic features. So it shows like rock types, and like it'll be like arcs, and like you'll see like the dips, and it'll be like colored a little, and it'll show like different variations. So again, it's good for you guys to like research up on topographic and geographic maps and understand the difference between the two. And then next is some pictures. So on the top left corner, that's an example of what topographic profiling looks like. And then on the bottom is an example of stereo nets. It's basically a sphere, but like 2D. And then on the top right-hand corner is the 3-point, is an example of a 3-point questions for calculations. And you can see there's like 3 X marks located differently, and you'll be like calculating distance using like triangles and like trigonometry. And then below that is a picture of geographic structure or geologic structure. So the one on the left is a dome, and then the one on the right is a basin. So just make sure you guys are familiar with these different structures and like the different type of maps and like calculation problems. So next we have questions. So please make sure you guys text this private to Angelica. What type of calculator is allowed? And also, if you guys have any questions during this time, feel free to type it in the chat and we'll answer it.
Okay, y'all can move on.
Okay, so fossils. One sec. Oh, dear. Okay, so in fossils, you're tested on your knowledge about formation of fossils, their adaptations, ecosystem, environments, relationships among those fossils, etc., and also rock formation. So about some of the details of this event, it is a written test, and they have most of, like when you go to competitions, at most of the competitions, you're gonna have stations, and you're gonna go to each of the stations, and you're gonna get around. They're gonna tell you the time you get in each of the stations. You go there, you look at the picture. They'll probably have a picture and some questions about the picture, so you have to answer them, and then you go to the next station. But once you move on to the next station, you're not allowed to come back to your previous one. And then they let you also have a magnifying glass. So they might have like fossils on their desk, and you might have to use a magnifying glass to see like the details and figure out what type of fossil it is. Then you're allowed to have a 2-inch or smaller 3-ring binder with you, just like the other event, like geomapping. Then no materials can be removed from the binder when you're at the station. So you have to have everything in your binder. And there are lots of fossils in this world. So if you go to the rulebook and look at it, you're going to see there is a list they give you, and you're going to be tested only based on the things that's in the list. Next slide, please. So about the event. During the event or the competition, you're asked about identifying fossils. So they give you pictures at stations or a picture on your paper, and you have to identify what it is. Then you have conditions that are required by plants and animals to fossilize. So different animals and different plants fossilize in different environments. So you have to know about it, and you're gonna find more information in the rulebook and inside the wiki. And then there are different ways of preservation that you need to know. You'll have some in the research packet and some you have to research on your own. You have to know about relative and absolute dating. So you need to know how, like you need to be able to figure out how something dated, like depending whether it's related or absolute. You're gonna find details about it in the research packet again. You need to know about geologic timescale, like Pleistocene era, and all the like eras after that. So, and major events that occur during each of the eras. They need to know how to determine the age of rocks and also know geological formation. They have to know sedimentary rocks like limestone, shale, etc. And you have to recognize them as well as know the differences and in which condition or how are they formed and all this stuff. You have to know about modes of life and environments like reef, terrestrial, aquatic, etc. So like there are lots of like reef, so you have to know a bunch and you'll see a list in the rulebook. There are a lot of things, so it's very hard to put everything in a slide. Then you have to know features of major fossil groups. You're gonna say in the rulebook like the groups you need to know. And then you need to know how fossils can be used to justify our work as an evidence of evolutionary trend. So you have to do some research and figure it out, find more details about it. You have to know how to trace fossils, where they were formed, their dates, when they and in which era could they have been formed. Like you have to like estimate and stuff. Then you have to know about stromatolites. Like that's the thing you have a picture on the right. So you have to know how they are formed, and what conditions they're formed, and where they formed. Next slide, please. So for the tryouts, you need to know the different ways fossils form. You'll see a list and the different ways in the research packet. You'll also see relative dating and absolute dating. You need to know, so we might give you a picture and ask you what is the age, and you need to be able to figure it out. And we're gonna also ask you about the difference between relative and absolute dating. Then you need to know about the sedimentary rocks. There are a lot of those, but we are gonna test on a few, and you'll see a list in the research packet. You need to know about their formation, and you need to be able to identify them. Then you're gonna have questions about geologic time. So again, look at the research packet, you'll find details in there. Then know the features, characteristics, and also be able to identify all the classes and genuses under phylum Brachiopods. So there are a bunch of different kingdoms and phylums you need to know for the event, like the entire fossil list, but we're just gonna test you only on one of the phylums. So we're making this very easy for you guys. Then you also need to know the taxonomic like what comes after what, like kingdom, then phylum, class, genus, species. So you need to know those. And then we're gonna ask you about some binary questions. Like we're gonna give you fossils from different phylums, and we're gonna ask you, okay, if we're to make a binder, how are you gonna put this together? Like, are you gonna put all the phylums together? Are you gonna put all the organisms under one phylum together? Like, you need to know how you're gonna organize your binder. We wanna see whether you know how to create the best binder you can possibly can, so that it helps you do really well during the events. So this is what I meant by the taxonomic order. If you see the picture on the left top corner, and there are a bunch under, like when it comes to taxonomic order, like you see subspecies and stuff, but we're just sticking with this for this test. And these are some sample questions. As you can see, there are stations, and as you can see again, like it's asking to identify the genus, identify again. So there, it's all about identification. That's why you need to have like pictures of the fossils in your binder. And then you need to know details about, like in question number 17, you can see how did the organism of specimen eliminate waste. So you need to know, you need to know every detail about the fossils you have in your binder. And then you'll also have multiple choice questions, as you can see in 3 and 4. And I would say just the main thing for fossils you will see all the time is identification. So you need to know how to identify and know the differences, different features about all of the fossils. So question, please text your answer privately to Angelica. What is the name of the phylum you're going to be tested on for the tryouts?
Should we have the answers?
Yeah, you can go ahead and start.
Okay. Okay, so our officer for this event is having some technical issues, so let's wait a moment.
Do you guys have any questions so far? You can ask us. This is the right time to ask. Sorry, I think she got disconnected. Something's wrong with her device, but Alice should be here shortly.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay. Could I start now with water quality?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So water quality is an event that will test you on the understanding and evaluation of marine and estuary aquatic environments, and it's a broad topic. So please check the list on the rubric for a more of a detailed topic. So let's go into event details. You could have a team of 2, and you could also bring a cheat sheet with you. Just like we mentioned in the previous workshops, it is recommended to have like diagrams, charts, more of like visual pictures instead of having like font 3 paragraphs all over the page. And as you can tell by the event name, water quality is more of like an environmental like science related topic. So therefore, you would have to do a lot of like self-studying for this event. And if you have taken AP Environmental Science, that might be easier for you. You may bring 2 non-programmable, non-graphing calculators. And this event will be in 2 portions. The writing portion will consist of multiple choice questions and open response questions. It really depends on the amount of each type question you get. Like when I did this event at Seven Lakes, I got a whole like essay prompt to write about on water cycle. So yeah, but at Regents, it was mostly multiple choice and a few open response questions. And for the build portion, you have to build a solenometer. It's basically an instrument that is used to measure the salinity of water, and you have to build that before competition day. So some level 1 questions we might ask you are to fill out the water or the nitrogen cycles. We've included diagrams in the resource packet, so you could look over that, try to memorize it for those easy questions. You would also have to understand aquatic food chains or food webs and the structure of the ecosystems. For example, like no vocabulary words from 8th grade science, like I remember mutualism, prediction, all those are also included in the resource packet, so I'm not going to talk about them too much. There are about like 20 organisms you have to identify for this event, but we've only chose about 6 of those organisms for you to memorize and just like research on, only for tryouts. But we would ask you how you would study or memorize the info of like 20 organisms. And yeah, basically like, what are your plans on studying that? Level 2 or 3 questions are gonna be a little bit complicated, but not really. You have to understand and interpret data. I didn't see many questions on like data analyzing, like analysis and stuff, but be prepared to be asked on those kind of questions. We'll also have questions on vocab, like the lotic or the lentic ecosystems. We might ask you to compare those two, so please know the difference of that. And we might ask you to explain the water or the nitrogen cycle, just in case if the tournament asks those kind of questions again. And be able to understand the wastewater treatment, which is a process used to convert wastewater into an effluent that could be returned to the natural water cycle. And you would also have to know the septic tank disposal systems, which is a conventional method of solving or for this treatment. You would also have to know potable water treatment and its 6 steps. I'm not gonna talk about this too much. It's included in the resource packet, and the Scioli wiki page is a really resource on studying that part. And then you would also have to explain how you could build a solenometer. That's probably gonna be an open response question. And of course, you would have to know how to use it. Okay, some pictures here. So the first picture on the left is the food chain, or like a food web that you could that you might expect on the test. There might be questions asked to ask about like the amount of energy passed from one organism to another. And then on the right, it's a water cycle diagram that we might ask you to fill out the terms included in that diagram. So yeah. Next slide, please. So this is more of like an example of an identification question. So you have to identify this organism. There also might be other questions asked, like where could you find this organism? Is it could you find it in the Pacific Ocean, or in the Indian Ocean or something? And this organism is called Gorgonia. And that should be it for water quality. So please text this. Please text the answer privately to Angelica, and this is a true or false question. There's only a written test to take for water quality.
think you guys can continue.
All right. So that's it. Any questions?
If you have any
Oh,
questions, just text it in the chat section.
yeah.
And if you guys didn't answer one of the questions, you can type them in now. It's fine. I'll give you guys credit for that. Is everyone good then? Okay. And if you ever need us in the future, again, Discord, we're here for you. Yeah. Do you guys want to add anything?
Not really. Just thank you for coming to our last workshop and good luck on tryouts.
Yeah, we're gonna have a really eventful year coming up. We got some information to give you guys soon. So keep studying, keep working hard, and you'll definitely get the benefits for getting there. So thanks again for making these workshops possible. You know, it's been a successful week. Thanks for that. It's really you guys who make it possible. So thanks again, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.